Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is a bunch of Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey there, everybody. How you doing this week? You are, in fact, listening to The Right of the People on January 18th, 2019, in preparation of the coming snowpocalypse, which to Squib is like, it's Friday. Okay,
I'll admit it. While you were running the music, I was looking on the Weather Channel app and looking at the advisory, and it's like, oh, that's for Saturday. I don't work Saturday. No, it's not that big of a deal, but I will do this. I will stop at Wally World tonight on the way home and pick up a couple extra bags of ice melter. So, there.
All right.
Thanks for the heads up stuff, Hunter.
All right. Gonna go ahead and go through the panel here. Say hello. Got the kingpin himself, David Bowling. How you doing, sir?
Doing mighty fine. Thanks for having me. I always appreciate it.
You anticipating anything from the snowpocalypse?
Yeah, probably a bunch of disappointment by the lying news media or the weatherman, whatever he's called, but
yeah. Squib, we've already heard from you. You've got some plans for some ice melt. What about you, Stealth?
I have to go into work for training at 11 p.m. I don't know if I'm going to end up walking or if I'm going to end up getting an Uber. We'll see.
I would say enjoy that, but that would just be too much. Myself, I already went and did my errands that I had to do. I did them today. I bought a few gallons of kerosene just in case the power goes out so I can stick it in the heater and we won't freeze and I can keep my pipes from freezing. But other than that, I'm not too worried. My wife says that if the forecaster was a man, the called for 10 to 12 inches would be more like 5 or 6 because we exaggerate. We don't know what 12 inches actually looks like, she says.
You need a rim shot sound effect.
Yeah, no kidding. But so there it is. I'm not really too worried about it. Either it'll be, really anytime they talk about stuff like this, it doesn't quite live up to the hype, so I'm not too worried. Let's take a few sensible precautions, but other than that, I'm not going to get my panties in a bunch unless and until it, becomes 1978 again. Which I actually do remember. So out in the chat, we got Rich White, Local 223, Rob D. They're all talking about the snowpocalypse out there. Old 60 Armory. Who else we got? Gunpowder Beauty. How you doing? The Poor Conservative. That's a new one on me, I think. If you are new to the show, welcome. Hopefully you stick around and you like what you hear. We got Hiker Bro, Guitar Man Pete, and Clint Torres. 7 Wonders. People starting to roll in now. That's good. Let's see if we have anyone over on the Gun Channel side. Green Badger Outdoors. Now, I know I would have remembered that one. So welcome to you as well. Looks like we got G Webb's the man himself over there on the Gun Channel side. Hello, sir. Thank you for having Gun Channels. Speaking of Gun Channels, if you are not a member over there at gunchannels.com, you should go over there. Become a member. It is free. You do not have to be a content creator to join. You can just be somebody looking for someone to talk to. Gun Channels, as I always like to say, is the water cooler of the internet's Second Amendment community. And you will always find someone to talk with and something to talk about over there 24/7, 365. So go ahead and join. Looks like we got Glimtech Arms joining in the YouTube side. I don't recognize you. Welcome. The poor conservative says they've been here before. Good. Well, hey, that means you must have liked what you saw because you came back. So thank you. Excuse me a moment. Doggone it. I apologize for that. I might have to just, if you hear me suddenly go mute, that's why. Kind of got a little frog in my throat. I'm sure my Mountain Dew Kickstart Ultra is not helping, but hey, it's helping keep me awake and at least some semblance of energy, right? So go ahead and get into it. Today, as the thumbnail said, we're going to be talking about the gun owners of America. They are filing suit to challenge the National Firearms Act. That's awesome. You know, it's about time. I don't know how far they'll get, but let's go ahead and get into it. This is from a press release by the GOA. Gun Owners of America funds challenge to National Firearms Act in U.S. Supreme Court. This is from January 15th, 2019. Gun Owners of America and its litigating arm, Gun Owners Foundation, today continued their defense of Jeremy Kettler, a disabled combat veteran, against a conviction for violating the National Firearms Act. The Obama Justice Department brought criminal felony charges against Jeremy for illegally possessing an unregistered firearm suppressor under the authority of the Kansas Second Amendment Protection Act. The Kansas statute declares that any suppressor manufactured, possessed, and used within the borders of Kansas is exempt from federal law. Relying on that Kansas law, in 2014, Jeremy purchased a suppressor from a local military surplus store, but did not register it with the ATF pursuant to the National Firearms Act. Believing he was following the law, Jeremy posted a video about his new suppressor on Facebook, and the ATF swooped in. Rather than simply requiring Jeremy to register his suppressor, the feds instead chose felony prosecution to make an example of Jeremy and to intimidate all who resist federal power over guns. Jeremy was indicted and convicted of possessing an unregistered silencer, and now this veteran is a federal felon. GOA and GOF have stood with Jeremy, both in his appeal in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit and now in the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, GOA and GOF lawyers representing Jeremy filed a petition for a writ of certiorari in the U.S. Supreme Court asking the court to hear Jeremy's case. The petition challenges the decision of the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, which rejected Jeremy's appeal from the district court. Jeremy's petition first challenges the legitimacy of the National Firearms Act, which was passed in 1934 and thereafter upheld by the Supreme Court in 1937 under the constitutional power of Congress to lay and collect taxes. The petition argues that the NFA as it exists today no longer can be justified as a so-called tax. In fact, each of the reasons the Supreme Court gave in 1937, finding it to be a tax, no longer apply today, 82 years later. Rather, the NFA has become what Justice Frankfurter once described as regulation, quote, wrapped in a verbal cellophane of a revenue measure, unquote, an unabashed gun control regulatory scheme designed not to raise revenue for the federal government, but instead to keep NFA items out of the hands of Americans. Next, Jeremy's petition challenges the 10th Circuit's absurd holding that the Second Amendment applies only to bearable arms, but not firearms accessories such as suppressors. The petition points out that the Second, Third, Seventh, and Ninth Circuits have all concluded that the Second Amendment extends beyond actual firearms to ammunition, magazines, the ability to purchase firearms in gun stores, and the right to practice at shooting ranges. Finally, Jeremy's petition argues that if the Supreme Court continues to uphold the NFA as a tax, then it is allowing Congress to impose a tax on a constitutionally protected right, something which the Supreme Court has long said to be unconstitutional. Prior to the confirmation of Justice Kavanaugh in October of last year, the Supreme Court had refused to hear numerous firearms cases, leading some members of the court to comment on the distressing trend that the treatment of the Second Amendment as a disfavored right. Excuse me. While some did not seem to mind the ATF's regulation of weapons covered by the National Firearms Act, GOA and GOF have stood for the right to own bearable arms of all types and firearms accessories as well, including suppressors and machine guns. GOA and GOF truly hope that this trend in the Supreme Court to allow the lower courts to disregard the Heller and McDonald decisions will begin to change now that the court has another solidly conservative member who, as a judge on the D.C. Circuit, was unafraid to apply the Second Amendment text and the Heller decision to uphold gun rights. As stated in the GOA-GOF petition, for decades, the Second Amendment was largely ignored, and ever since this court's decision in Heller in 2008, the lower courts have found creative ways to avoid applying it to invalidate onerous infringements of protected rights. Fifth Circuit Judge Don Willett lamented that constitutional scholars have dubbed the Second Amendment the Rodney Dangerfield of the Bill of Rights. As former Ninth Circuit Judge Alex Kaczynski recently noted, the time has come to treat the Second Amendment as a real constitutional right. It's here to stay. The court has allowed many Second Amendment challenges to go by the boards, although not without some of its members drawing attention to what was called this distressing trend, the treatment of the Second Amendment as a disfavored right. Peru v. California, so that was part of the dissent that Justice Thomas wrote in the Peruta case when they refused to hear that one. This case provides an appropriate vehicle to address the question of whether a tax on the exercise of Second Amendment rights is permissible. Jeremy Kettler's petition presents solid, well-argued questions important to all gun owners, and we hope the court will grant cert to decide them. And so do I. I hope that the court decides to hear this, because based on what the GOA is saying, it does raise some interesting legal principles involved here. Mostly, see, the Supreme Court likes to hear cases that the lower courts are disagreeing on. So if you have one circuit saying one thing and another circuit saying another, the Supreme Court's more likely to hear that case so that they can settle it, so that they can kind of arbitrate and determine which one of the two lower courts is right. So I have some hope that they'll hear it. I don't know that I have any hope that the NFA will be completely overturned. I think that the best we can really hope for is to get suppressors and other accessories removed from it. But, you know, the interesting argument of allowing the government to tax a constitutional right, it would be a good way to get this overturned. I mean, you know, they're not going to allow an imposition of a tax for the First Amendment. They're not going to allow you to have to pay a tax to get a license to be exempt from search without probable cause. So we'll see how this goes. You guys have any opinions on this?
I like it about as much as I don't like it. I think that they could have picked a better case to do this. I think that they are arm wrestling themselves by taking this. And the reason I say that is the NFA is unconstitutional because it infringes on the right to bear arms and is taxing a right. That's correct. But the state of Kansas decided to go, we don't give two craps about federal law. We're doing what we want to do. The same thing that New York and New Jersey and Maryland and Illinois and California and Oregon and Washington and Hawaii, and the list just goes on, are doing when they make laws restricting our rights. They're saying, we don't care what the federal law is. We're going to go above and beyond that and restrict it. Well, Kansas did the opposite. They're both wrong, in my opinion. If you want to go in and you want to say the Second Amendment is the law of the land, period, shall not be infringed, period, you cannot allow one state to penalize and restrict violating federal law, but you cannot allow another state to say that federal law, we don't recognize it. Even if that federal law is restrictive, you need to go after that federal law and get rid of it. But I just don't think that they picked the right case to do that. Now, I don't want to see anything happen to this guy, and I don't want us to keep losing when we're fighting. But I just think they should have thought this through a little bit better, because I really don't think they're going to win. And if anything, I think they're going to make it worse by taking on this particular case for that fight. Find a different case to win that fight.
Yeah, particularly when you're talking about the principle of state laws being different from federal law, because historically speaking, it's okay to make a law that is more restrictive than federal law. You cannot make one that is less restrictive, and that's what Kansas did. So, I hope that I haven't read the petition, which I guess I probably should have, right, if I was going to talk about it. But from what I understand, they're not charging it or not challenging the NFA based on the Kansas law. They're just challenging it on the constitutional basis of taxing a constitutionally protected right.
I just, all they're going to do is they're going to have the things restricted and then they'll lift the tax and then you can't get them at all. What I'm saying is, if they had gone in from the standpoint of, okay, you guys are right, you're the federal freaking government and you are upholding the Constitution, and the Constitution says that a state cannot supersede a federal law. So therefore, Kansas is wrong for saying it doesn't recognize the NFA. However, New York is wrong for not allowing concealed carry permits. Maryland is wrong for making you fill out the BFA. You know what I'm saying? Flip it on them.
Go. Interesting. It would be a reversal of precedent, but it would be interesting. It would be great to have it happen.
Well, the Supreme Court has definitely not been the friend of gun owners in Maryland. I was reading through last night, just on Maryland.gov, just reading over the gun laws again. And then I started going back into some of the links, and it's not like, it's easy to think when you think about Maryland's gun laws that it's just nobody's here except for me and 3 other people saying shall not be infringed, but it's not necessarily true. There's been some really long, hard fought court cases where the appeals courts agree with our local state courts. And then when you try to bump it up to the Supreme Court, they just say, no, we don't want to hear the case. And that's happened from what I was reading last night, just briefly going over. There was 3 major gun laws in Maryland that the Supreme Court was like, nah, we don't feel like seeing it. And the arguments that were being made against them were, at least in my mind, pretty valid. Now, I'm not a lawyer or a judge, and I am biased because, I believe in the Second Amendment and I'm a gun owner. But if the Supreme Court would have taken the time to say, okay, let me just look at that, a lot of times they've just said, no, we're sticking with what the appeals court said. And then now you have gun-hating Maryland.
My 2 cents on the situation. The Squib is correct. A state cannot override a federal law, but there are states that say, like, you can't have an SBR, even though if you pay the tax stamp to get one, under federal law you can have it, but a state can say, we're not going to let you have it anyway. To that. Second, what I've read over this specific article was, there's 3 possibilities from what's in the article. Either they're going to, if they get it to the Supreme Court, either they're going to uphold that you can't tax a right. They're going to uphold that the guy didn't know, but he still needs to pay the tax stamp. Or what they're going to say is, and this is the third option, they shouldn't have arrested him. If all they wanted was the $200, that's all they wanted, then they should have said, yo, this is the paperwork, this is how much money you have to pay. Okay, because technically what he did was evading taxes. That falls under what? IRS. Tax evasion. But he followed state law. He didn't know.
Well, I suspect that didn't know comes in air quotes there. I mean, it's pretty obvious that, I think just about anybody who would want to buy a suppressor would understand that you have to register that with the ATF before you can take possession. So I don't know that I buy the I didn't know defense, but I do buy I was following state law, and I also buy the fact that it shouldn't be on the frickin' list to begin with.
Well, I can buy the I didn't know part because how many people don't know about firearms to begin with? And that's not a firearm. It's an accessory.
I got you, but the kind of people that buy suppressors, I think, are more than your run-of-the-mill everyday dude. I think that the people that want to buy suppressors have a little bit more knowledge about it than the general public. So I don't buy the I didn't know thing. I would not buy that. If I were sitting on a jury, I wouldn't buy that one. But then again, since I do know, maybe I just assume that everybody else should know. I don't know. Guitar Man Pete says he got it over the counter, though. Yeah, he did. And maybe he did figure that, well, the state law says I can do it. I'll go ahead and do it. But it's not really a defense. Clint Torres says something that is very accurate. He says people need to be educated on jury nullification. That means that the jury can look at the law and say, you know what, this law is a bunch of crap. Doesn't apply. Get rid of it. And done. Bye.
Speaking of knowing the laws, a lot of people ask me about, their carry permit coming through Maryland. And I read last night that according to Maryland, they do honor the FOPA, which is apparently the Firearms Owners Protection Act. Real quick, if you come from Pennsylvania and you're driving through Maryland to get to Virginia, you can keep your gun on you. You can keep your high capacity magazine in your gun. What you cannot do is stop in Maryland and hang out. If you stop for gas, that's fine. If you stop for a sandwich, that's fine. If you stop to hang out with your friends, you cannot carry. But you can drive through the state without having to lock up your gun and put it in the trunk and all that stuff.
FOPA does not cover open or concealed carry. FOPA is for transportation.
Correct.
So FOPA requires you to lock it and case it.
Correct.
FOPA is not about concealed carry. FOPA does not protect that at all.
Not a bit.
Well, that's the first time I had ever heard of it last night while I was reading it, so I really wasn't sure what it meant.
It is about
in separate lockable cases.
You can travel through any state. If your state allows you to have gun X, and all the states surrounding it say you can't have it, but you're trying to travel through them to get to another state that says you can have it, and you're just traveling for business, pleasure, whatever it is, you have to have it in the vehicle, in a case, locked up, with the ammunition separated in a way that you cannot get to the ammunition to load the gun easily.
Right. And see, that's a sneaky
while
thing
you're traveling, you can stop to go to the bathroom, you can stop to eat, you can get a hotel room for the night, you can stop and stay there as many days as it takes to fix your car if your car breaks down or your truck or whatever while you're traveling through that state. But you're right, yes, you aren't there to go visit family and go in the backyard and just start shooting this gun that's not allowed in state XYZ.
Now, see, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because as I was reading it last night, it really wasn't all that clear. But there's a lot of stuff. If you go and go to Maryland.gov and start reading all the rules, and then they have summaries for all the laws, so you don't have to read all the legal speak. They're all written very, very vague and kind of hard to understand. And they didn't mention anything in all of what I read last night about locking it up. They made it sound like if you got your open carry or concealed carry, you can drive through Maryland just fine.
No.
FOPA was never about open carry or concealed carry.
Protections Act.
That's the only link I didn't click on, was that. I just read what it said, and I just kept reading what Maryland said about it, and Maryland was being deceptive.
To quote Admiral Akbar, it's a trap.
However, you said if you want to drive from Pennsylvania to Maryland, if you live in Pennsylvania and you've got a concealed carry permit, that's great. But say like me, if I want to drive down to Maryland and bring some of my guns that are legal in Maryland to go out shooting with you, I have to bypass Pennsylvania altogether. I cannot drive through Pennsylvania with my guns, even if they're locked up, cased, and I'd say, screw it, I won't even buy ammo until I get to Maryland. Because right now, the governor has enacted these emergency whatever conditions or something, and if I don't have a concealed carry permit recognized by the state of Pennsylvania, I cannot transport a firearm through the state, even with FOPA. They're telling the federal government, fuck you, sorry, it gets me mad because I spent like a week and a half going over this with Black Cat. We were doing all this research on trying to, they have more or less said, forget the federal law, we are doing what we want to do. This is exactly why I say Pennsylvania isn't right for doing this, and some of these other states aren't right for doing some of the things they do that supersede the federal law, so Kansas can't get away with making it better for you, as nice as that would be. So
yeah,
I cannot transport a firearm through the state of Pennsylvania at all unless I have a concealed carry permit recognized by the state of Pennsylvania. And as far as I know, they have reciprocity with Michigan. However, I let my CPL expire, so I don't have one. So I literally cannot put it in a case, lock it up, put it in the trunk, not have any ammunition in the vehicle at all, and drive through Pennsylvania to get to Maryland. Because if for some reason there's an interaction with the police, say I get in a fender bender, and they decide they want to search my vehicle, I'm being hauled away to the hospital, and they go, he ain't around, let's look at, oh my goodness, he's got this. If they wanted to, they could arrest me for doing that, and it's not right.
To see if that held up on appeal, but I wouldn't want to be the test case.
Me neither.
That's one of the things that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago when just before the midterm elections was the concealed carry reciprocity bill that they had at the Senate. If it passes, like my thoughts, and this is just me being, indoctrinated by the state of Maryland, my thoughts is it doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. Larry Hogan says you still can't carry your gun in my state. So doesn't Larry Hogan, if it passes and the Senate passes it and it goes through and it becomes a law that, it's reciprocity everywhere, can't each state still say no?
No, because we fought a war in the 19th century that said states' rights is BS. So if they say that the state can override the federal government, you better pay reparations to every family of every Confederate soldier. Because the war was fought over states' rights, and the side that said states' rights are BS won. So a lot of people are going to be eating crow.
Yeah, but good luck getting the federal government to go to war to actually protect our rights.
And don't get me wrong. I agree. I believe in
they've been letting New Jersey get away with violating FOPA for years now. I was going to bring Jersey up as the example of it, like you did with PA. Try going through New Jersey with something you're not allowed to have in New Jersey, even though you're not stopping. They'll just pull you over because you have an out-of-state plate. Search your car, find your stuff, and you're a felon.
Believe me, I don't like this stuff.
Be damned.
I don't like this stuff. It irritates the crap out of me. And the reason they have things like FOPA and state preemption and things like that is so we don't have confusing rules and laws like this. Because it is. It's very confusing. And they could say ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law. And, because if you say, well, we're going to let everybody go who says they didn't know, then everybody's going to go to court and go, Your Honor, I didn't know. And then, okay, you're free to go. And then nobody ever, So I understand, even though I don't always agree with that, the whole ignorance of the law is no excuse. There are lots of things that I don't agree with, but we have to learn how to live with them until we can get them changed. I would love to see this case have something, or the GOA case have something to do to make FOPA more, I don't know, just come down on these states that don't honor FOPA.
They need to have some teeth to it where the individuals involved can be held individually liable and be prosecutable. C4 Defense says just say no to the search when asked. Come on, Sarge, you know how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm not about no, because
you might beat it in court, but they're on the side of the road. If they want to search you, you're getting searched.
No, it ain't that. It's like
and in New Jersey, you might not beat it in court.
That's one of the funny things about Maryland is with all the gun laws that we have, you do not have to tell an officer you're armed if you get pulled over.
Yeah, we do.
Right, but it's different in every state. So if I was driving through there and I would tell them that I'm armed only because we have it here, and it's just force of habit here. And that might open up the door. I'm trying to be honest with the officer, and it might open up the door for some sort of illegal search. Yeah.
Sarge, I know that's not the way it's supposed to work, but there are places where that is exactly the way it works.
It's like, no, you can't search me. Oh, okay. Then what we'll do is we'll sit here until we get the warrant. Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll get the dog and go around your car.
Well, and it also depends on what neighborhood you're in, because I may or may not have been in Baltimore City a time or two, and may or may not have run into a few cops. And you can tell them all you want, and they're going to do whatever they want. They're not getting a warrant. If they want to search your car, they're going to do it. That's it.
There are places where reason does not rule, where the law does not rule.
Hey, the GOA must have heard me because they just emailed me.
I'm glad to hear that in your jurisdiction where you work, that law and reason do rule the day. But believe me, there are places where it doesn't.
I will say this to C4's comment on YouTube, dogs don't smell guns. You're correct, but all a canine officer has to do is make the dog give it the sign that the dog's trying to smell something, and right then and there they put you in custody and they do a search.
Dude, I almost got pulled out of my vehicle because I had Purell on my hands. Purell.
Hey, Sarge, I'll let you borrow one of mine, brother.
All you've got to do as a police officer is go, that's a sniffing sound, and say, I smell weed.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
Even if they don't find nothing, it's good enough for reasonable articulated suspicion.
Now, understand, 99.9% of the law enforcement officers in this country won't do some shady crap like that. Most doing a hard job. However, there are some that really love how their jackboots fit.
And the youngins, too, looking to prove themselves.
You know, there are some, and I run into them at work, too, where they'll bring somebody in and, you know, say it's a because we're not allowed to accept youth in my facility that are there on a status offense. In other words, that's an offense that, if committed by an adult, would not be a crime, say tobacco or runaway or unruly or something like that, or underage consumption, something that if an adult did it, we don't have to take them. And when you tell them that, no, we're not going to take them, boy, they want to strap their jackboots on and try and intimidate you into taking the kid and raise this kind of hell. And I'm going to call this person and that person. And oh, even better, when you ask the kid if they've been drinking or using drugs, and then, or if they're injured, and then you tell them that they have to go take the kid to go get medically cleared before you can accept them into the detention center. Woo-hoo-hoo. Boy, then the fireworks really start. So I have no doubt that those guys would pull that kind of crap alongside the road, because they try and do it with me. Now, of course, I tell them to go piss up a rope, because 99% of the time they have no jurisdiction where I'm at anyway. And even if they do, doesn't matter. They don't have the authority, but still.
But see, just like most people don't know all the laws, they also don't know all their rights. Right? So the average person doesn't know that they can refuse a search.
Yeah. No, and you're right there too. Most people don't know that they can refuse a search. Most people are well, you know, I got nothing to hide. Go ahead. I don't care.
Most people don't understand
not knowing that you're nothing to hide in that location is something to hide. Like if you're going through New Jersey and happen to have a hollow point round in your range bag that you have, you know, locked in your trunk, and your firearms are locked in a separate lockable case, doesn't matter. That hollow point's a felony.
Most people don't understand that you have the right to remain silent before the cop tells you that.
Yeah. So anytime I've had good experiences with it, because anytime I've had an officer ask me, hey, do you mind if I check blah, blah, blah? And I say, I do not give consent. I will not resist, but I do not give consent. Okay, yeah, no problem. That's when you know they're fishing. So, like I said, I have had good experiences with law enforcement, you know, other than the guys that try and feel their oats when they're trying to bring somebody in where I work. But other than that, yeah.
It's been 70-30 for me. 70% good officer, 30% anywhere from questionable to really bad. You don't know until they're up on you. It's unfortunately, you don't know.
Well, you know, the thing is, they're people too. And they run the gamut from good to bad, just like everybody else. You know, I am probably the most pro cop you can be without actually being one. And, you know, I also know that there are some that are real jackholes. You know, for instance, that officer Harkness here in Canton, Ohio, who pulled that dude out, that concealed carrier out, was threatening to shoot him and shit just because he didn't inform him in a quote-unquote timely enough manner that he had a firearm. After the guy tried to inform him 4 or 5 times and couldn't because he kept being told to shut up. But, you know, that guy was a jackass. Thankfully, he's no longer working here. Anyhow, on to the with the rest of the show. Which, by the way, we can run late tonight. I don't care. I have nothing to do tonight. I'm on vacation, so that's wonderful.
Yes, keep me up, because when I go to sleep, I can wake up late. So
yeah, you're working. That's right. You're doing the midnight thing.
What is this? What is this word vacation that you and Gizzard Garrett keep saying?
It's where you stay home from work and you don't go to work, and they still pay you.
Wow. And that
It is
happens,
a paid
that happens in
benefit
America?
at a job. It is a paid benefit that you negotiate for when you decide to accept employment at a job.
That's right.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
I'm gonna ask
And if they tell you we don't do that here, you tell them to go piss up a tree, like what Budget said, because right now the economy is awesome and people need us. The employers need us more than we need jobs. And when that flips, you may have to give up your vacation.
Yeah. Oh, that's evidenced by that there's nothing more evidenced of the fact that the economy is good than that us in corrections right now are hurting. We're hurting bad for staff. There's like nobody that wants to work there. You know, the economy's bad. We're full of applicants. The economy's good. It's freaking tumbleweeds roaming through HR. That's what it is right now. Anyhow, there is a piece in, well, where's this? Oh, God. Got to look through my stack of stuff. Somehow it got discombobulated. I'm looking for a particular piece that I can't find. Anyhow, the other main thing I wanted to talk about, well, there's a couple, but the main thing was the report that just came out in, let's see, when did it come out? It was in January 16th, I think it was. It's entitled, let me scroll up to the top, Source and Use of Firearms Involved in Crime, Survey of Prison Inmates 2016. It's by Mariel Alper, PhD, and Lauren Glaze. It's published by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And it shows something that I'm sure most of us understand, that background checks are pretty much useless when it comes to stopping crime. I'm going to go ahead and share this. A particular table, table 5. You guys can, matter of fact, I will put this link in the chat, and you guys can go to it and look at it if you want in your own time. There, I put the link in the chat. You guys can go and download the report yourself. Use it for whenever you want. Let's go ahead and screen share this, though. Table 5. Among state and federal prisoners who had possessed a firearm during the offense for which they were serving time, sources and methods used to obtain a firearm 2016. So let's look at all prisoners. That's because I think that's more useful. Only 10% of prisoners purchased or traded at a retail source and underwent the background check. 25.3% of prisoners obtained from another individual, whether it's a family or friend or Someone else bought it for them. 43.2% bought it off the street, from an underground market, or theft. 1.5% from burglary. 0.2% from a retail source. This is under the category of theft. So 6.4% stole it. 1.5 from a burglary. 0.2 from a retail source. In other words, they broke into a gun store. 1.6% stole it from a family friend, and 3.1% stole it from somewhere they didn't specify. 17.4% got it from another source, either found at a location, brought by someone else, or other. So that's crazy, man. If you take at 43.2 and 6.4, that's what? 49.6% of almost half of all firearms were either stolen or bought from somebody else who stole it, whether from someone dealing drugs or the criminal gangs or whatnot. You know, this is what we've all been saying, is that universal background checks are bunk, because criminals, surprise, surprise, don't get background checks. You know, but we all could have told them that a long time ago. You know,
Indeed.
Of course, none of this matters, because we all know that, as I've said before, gun control isn't about the gun. It's always about the control. As these background checks have absolutely zero zip zilch, nothing to do with crime prevention, public safety, or anything like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up this report, and I'm glad that you are sharing the link, because I heard about this before this show, and I was kind of hoping you were going to bring it up. And when I looked at the show notes, I'm like, oh, good. I think when you've got stats from a government agency, especially something in law enforcement or Department of Justice or something like that, it backs us up. It backs up what we've been saying. All these people that say, "Oh, we just want you to have your guns registered, then we'll feel better." Well, why do you think that? Oh, because they said it on TV, on the news. You know, politician Senator so-and-so came on TV and said, if we could just register, we'd all be safer. So that's what we need to do. Okay, well, here's another government official saying something. Read this.
Yeah, and this is the thing about it is we have to counter their arguments, which are based solely on emotion and feelings, with facts. This is a verifiable, repeatable research fact that half of all guns used in crime were gained from illegal sources. At least half. The others were either gifted or bought for them, or loaned or borrowed from a family friend. You know, so that's, you know, not going through the background checks in a retail source. You know, that 25% is a argument that they'll use to say, well, we need universal background checks. Look, a quarter of all guns were used in crimes went through a private sale. You know, we need the background checks. But then again, our counter is, yes, but 50% of those wouldn't have gotten a background check anyway. We counter their emotional arguments with facts. That's the only way we can do it. And again, with the committed anti-gunner, that's not going to mean a thing. However, but what we have to remember, and I've said it before, is that we're not talking to that committed anti-gunner. I mean, yeah, we're talking to them, but that's not who our remarks and who our information is for. Our remarks, our information is for the people watching, the people listening, the people reading in our arguments online that may be undecided. That's who we're actually talking to. At least that's who I'm talking to anyway. That's who we should be talking to, because that's the person that we need to convince. We're never going to convince, you know, the hardcore committed anti-gunner, but we might get somebody that's on the fence.
Well, we're always forced into playing defense as well.
Yeah.
You know, we there's constantly like you were just saying, well, here's the truth about that, instead of, oh, you already know the truth because the report that came out, the reporter did their job and actually told some actual facts and evidence of the case, and statistics leading up to such things. And it never works like that. It's just guns killed somebody. We got to take the guns. And then the guy that doesn't care about guns is like, oh my God, he shot somebody with a gun. He shouldn't have a gun. That's bad.
Yeah.
It's the same. But that case we can't avoid. We're always going to have to play defense on there because we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think that being on the defensive for laws that are going to get passed, not just the rhetoric, but actual. We already know they came after the bump stock. We already know next they're going to come after triggers. So instead of waiting for them to come after triggers, we need to go after them and tell them, shall not be infringed on our triggers. Don't mess with our triggers. Don't mess with our scopes.
Well,
don't mess with my foregrip.
That's what's interesting about the suit filed by GOA is that it is in fact saying that you can't go after this, you can't go after that, you can't go after the accessories and whatnot. It's also what's interesting about the suit against the bump stock ban, because it's more directly saying the same thing. I'm glad that there are two lawsuits making their way through the court system that are doing that, because it will absolutely strengthen the Second Amendment.
And I don't know how the NRA works. I've never dealt with the NRA, but recently I've signed up to the newsletter for the Second Amendment Foundation, U.S. Concealed Carry, and the GOA. And I got emails all week long from them, not as a member, just signed up, didn't cost me a thing, give them my email address, and that's it. And they sent me a bunch of those chain letter things that they do, as far as the red flag laws and different kinds of laws. So it took me 2.5 minutes to fill out my information and click again to send out, one more in the pile. And, it didn't cost me anything either. So that's not a bad idea. If you're interested, go to the GOA and sign up for their newsletters.
Honestly, I'm not a fan of robo letters any more than I am of being robo called.
I understand that.
I now what I have done is I might take one of those robo letters and edit it a little bit to take a couple things away, add a couple things here and there to make it different. What I actually like to do is just write my own. And I think they pay more attention to it. Matter of fact, from what I understand, they actually pay more attention to a handwritten letter than they do emails and whatnot, or typed or anything like that, because it shows that you really take the time for it. I don't know how much, credence I put in that, but for what it's worth. But certainly sending the robo letters are far better than sitting around with your thumb up doing nothing. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's the point that I was making is, you can send the GOA your email, and they'll send you these robo letters, and you can click 2 or 3 clicks and basically be done. Then you don't have to get out a pen and a paper or whatever. It's just, I'm not saying it's a great idea, but it's an idea.
For sure.
Yeah.
AWR Hawkins from Breitbart has a piece out that actually I agree with wholeheartedly about this universal background check thing. This is from January 13th. House Democrats' gun control unenforceable without firearm registry. The gun control currently being pushed by House Democrats is unenforceable without a national firearm registry. On January 8, 2019, Breitbart News reported that House Democrats introduced legislation to criminalize private gun sales. They are using universal background checks as a means of criminalizing the sales, and they do not mention such checks are unenforceable without firearm registration. Instead, the Democrats keep talking about how their bill will prevent or reduce gun violence. Politico quoted Representative Mike Thompson, Democrat, California, saying, "Since the shooting at Sandy Hook, the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force has been fighting for a chance to pass legislation that will help save lives. Finally, with our new majority that ran on helping to prevent gun violence, we will introduce a bipartisan universal background checks bill. We will hold hearings, we will have a vote, and this legislation will finally pass the House. But the reality is that universal background checks open the door to a gun registry inasmuch as the government has to know every gun owner's name and the guns he or she owns in order for the checks to work. Think about it. Universal background checks require that Americans get permission from the government before buying a gun in any setting, retail or private. This means the government knows every time a gun changes hands, and this includes knowing the name of the buyer and the seller, of the make and caliber of the gun, etc. But the only way the government can know these things is to know exactly who owns the guns and what guns he or she owns at every moment of every day. Breitbart News reported the relationship between universal background checks and gun registration on April 14, 2013, when the Democrats were pushing the checks as a response to the attack on Sandy Hook Elementary School. Breitbart noted that the government has to know where every gun is in order to know that one neighbor is not selling a gun to another neighbor. House Democrats are not currently pushing a firearm registry, but without a complete knowledge of the location of all firearms, universal background checks simply will not work. So a registration will have to be added down the road if universal background checks are passed now. And California's example teaches us that confiscation will follow the establishment of universal background checks and firearm registration. And I think he's absolutely right. They're not after universal background checks. If we give them universal background checks, do you think they're just going to go, yay, we won, whoo, our work is done here? No, it's nothing more but yet another step in the path that they've been treading, yet another link in the chain they've been forging of disarmament.
You know what's going to happen next?
What's that?
There's going to be some stupid person in the news, like they did in, I believe it was Connecticut, who's like, well, the firearms registry should be public record and publish it so criminals can come do a shopping spree at anybody's house and just simply wait.
Yeah, but that would see, unfortunately,
says that every handgun he has is listed on his New York permit. Don't care for it at all. Yeah, I wouldn't care for that whatsoever.
The bad guy being able to look up my name on the internet and see how many guns I have at my house is really not something I'm worried about. It's the quote unquote good guy. I don't want my local government coming to my house and getting my stuff.
No, I don't want the local government coming to my house either. But if it was public knowledge, so if there was, you know, you can go on those websites and they'll tell you where all the pedophiles live.
Yeah.
What if they had that for gun owners? And what if they had that showing specifically what you own? So the guy says,
oh, that would
tonight I want to steal a semi-auto handgun. Who's got semi-auto handguns, right? Not, I don't want to go to a place where they only got a shotgun or something like that. So, look, I think that the average person out there doesn't understand that registration leads to confiscation. And I mean, David, I see why you're more concerned about the government than a thief, but in the same regard, they become thieves at that point because they're just going to, you know, come get it the way the British were confiscating weapons prior to the Revolutionary War or at the very beginning of it, because they knew if they disarmed the colonists, they wouldn't be able to fight back. Of course, you know, we either hid the weapons or we stole the British military weapons and turned it on them. But and in some cases we got weapons from the French as well. But I don't think the average person seems to, the whole, you know, oh, they won't do that. Oh, that would never happen here thing. You know, they just don't understand that, look, as long as you don't try to make any laws creating a registry and requiring a registration, we won't have anything to bitch about on that front. You want to nullify us? You want to make some of our stuff, quit restricting this, quit trying to get information about that, quit, you know, doing this and doing that. Simple stuff, really basic stuff is all we've been asking for years. Just government, quit. And then you win every argument. But they don't seem to understand it that way.
Rob D says they do have a list that has been made public in the past. He had to go opt out to get it so that info can't be published.
It's a public safety hazard.
See, here in Michigan, we've got a handgun registry, and it's been around as long as I've been alive. Now, I don't go, oh man, I just can't buy a handgun because I'm going to be on the list with the Michigan State Police. No, I go buy my handgun. I don't like it. It doesn't cost me anything, and it's not really that hard to do. It's not like this big hassle and all that. But it's a whole, I don't like it. However, it's been here, and it's not going away. And we're lucky that we're a gun-friendly state. With the exception of that, pretty much everything else is really gun-friendly, especially compared to a lot of other places. But because it's been here so long, it's just accepted. Now, if they do that on a national level in any way, shape, or form, and it goes on long enough, like until the next generation comes around, they'll just get to where it's day-to-day, and they'll accept it. And there won't be any fighting it. There will not be any way to get enough behind it to fight it, because it's what we've always done this. So
that's why our generation has to fight it. That's why the generations before yours should have fought it in Michigan.
That's what I understand. I don't agree with, but I get it. You know, I can see where they're coming from, and I can see the power of their argument when they go with feelings. Like we talked about the other day, when there's a dead body, and you can say, this is what happened. A gun went off, and this body's laying here, and look how sad, and look at his mom's over there crying. You spark emotion in people. We're never, ever going to get rid of that. That's always going to be a thing. But what makes my brain melt and start oozing out my ears is just the stupidity, like you mentioned earlier in your statistics. Bad guys don't care about the law. I just don't understand. I mean, it makes me, Rob D put in the chat, it's crazy. And it makes my mind go absolutely insane, thinking, you know, I'm going to register this, 21-year-old kid, A student who blah blah. Make up your own scenario. Whatever kind of person wants to go out and get a gun, they have to be treated like a criminal and fingerprinted and all these other kinds of things and asked a bunch of questions. When the guy who's actually committing the crime just walked right past you while you're so busy making me fill out all these paperwork, the guy who's going to go rob somebody walked right past you.
Yep, that's right.
And that was my point. Like I said, it's a public safety hazard because you're going to do this stuff, and people are going to go, well, we have the right to know. And you're going to have somebody, like I said, like they did in, I believe it was Connecticut, be stupid. Oh, I have the right to know. I have the right to know. Just like the pedophile list and stuff. And what's going to happen next is, you know what? What if someone makes an app and it's like, here's the local gun near you. It's a shopping list. It's going to make communities more dangerous. It's going to put people's families, their kids in danger. But you try to tell somebody that, they don't want to listen.
Oh, but what I was saying earlier,
the whole point of those lists, and like they've done before. New York had done it before, where they were publishing lists of concealed carry holders and whatnot. It's to deter you from getting it.
Yeah, I don't think they're publishing those lists to say, hey, criminal, go steal this person's gun. But they're publishing that list to A, scare you from getting a firearm, and B, your Code Pinks and your Med and all these other kind of anti-everything protest professionally people are going to be standing out your front door talking about, give me your assault weapon. Yo, your assault weapon kills people.
You were talking about letters earlier, whether they be drafted by you or they're chain letter. How many people don't write a letter? They don't send an email. Not because they don't care. Not because they're lazy or complacent. Not because they've done it in the past and they've got negative results or no results at all. How many people do it because they're thinking they don't want to end up on one of these lists? They're paranoid. Now, some of the paranoia is justifiable, but it's the same thing, right?
That's true.
Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. Normally, I'd be out of time now, but since I don't have to go to work tonight, I feel empowered to just continue on. So we're going to go ahead and continue on. I think it was last week or maybe the week before, we talked about the young lady in Chicago who had an Illinois concealed carry permit, and some young, poor, misguided gentleman attempted to rob her, and she shot him until he was dead. Well, there are a couple articles that have come out since then, opinion pieces on this, and they're very different. You know, it's one shows the attitude that we're fighting when we are discussing our rights. The other gives us hope that there is actually a brighter future for us. Of course, let's go ahead and start with the bad. This is a piece by the Washington Free Beacon by Alex Griswold titled "Think Progress Writer Has Quite Upset a Concealed Carrying Woman Killed." Was quite upset a concealed carrying woman killed her armed mugger. It's from January 15th. The Twitter ratio du jour comes to us courtesy of Think Progress reporter Zach Ford. The tweet is now deleted, but the author took a screenshot of it. Zach Ford says, "Conservatives are thrilled a woman with a concealed carry permit shot and killed a 19-year-old would-be mugger. That's not how justice works. The penalty for theft is not death, nor do we want it to be." I will note that now Ford apologized in a multi-tweet thread. I want to break down his initial tweets anyway, and not because it means mocking a liberal or because I have a daily post quota. Those are only like 90% of my motivation for this blog post. The other reason is that, as with most bad tweets, I think the mindset and line of thinking that led to the tweet is more instructive than the final product. There's a whiff of a hint of a glimmer of truth to Ford's tweet. The law generally requires that the use of self-defense be reasonable and proportionate. There are cases where the use of lethal self-defense are highly questionable, and you can be charged with murder or manslaughter. Few of us think that armed citizens should go around gunning down pickpockets, for example. But what Ford left out is that the mugger himself was armed with a handgun. I suspect this omission was intentional because that small fact utterly destroys his case. Armed robbery is not merely theft. It comes with a threat of violence and harm. When guns are involved, that threat is implicitly murder. What we actually have is a case where a woman responded to a credible threat of violence with a proportionate amount of violence. I don't know that I'm thrilled that one human being was forced to kill another, but yes, I call that justice. He continued to defend his stance in the replies to his tweet. Zach Ford, "The punishment for armed robbery is not death, though. Of course, I don't think he should have had a gun either, but if she had let him rob her, even at gunpoint, both likely would have survived. It's the praise for her gun ownership that bothers me." Again from Zach Ford, "The kid was 19. I just feel like we're being way too disposable with his life. A gun death is a gun death, and the fact that she was able to protect herself in no way motivates me to change my belief that she should not have had a gun in the first place." There's a lot going on here, so I'll take them in order. The kid was 19 is almost a contradiction in terms. 19-year-olds are legally adults. An adult walked around that night with a gun, robbing women. This is the same infantilizing nonsense that is rightly called out by Ford and his allies when used to excuse crimes from privileged white college students and the good old boys. It's a gun death is where you start to see how ideology is driving Ford's stance. Guns, you see, are bad. It's so alien to Ford's worldview that a gun might have been used in a good way that even something as straightforward as self-defense must be cast as a bad outcome. The fact that there was an actual human being in danger is beside the point when there's a cause to defend. Again, we get the punishment for armed robbery is not death, but self-defense is not a matter of punishment. Self-defense is justified because every person has a right to life, and with that comes the right to use the appropriate use of force to protect that right. That another person is harmed through the use of force is a predictable effect of self-defense, but the intention is the protection of life. Depending on the circumstances, you may view the harm to an attacker as punishment they deserve, but that's irrelevant to the larger moral justification. That's why self-defense is justified even against those who we wouldn't think of as morally culpable, such as the mentally incompetent or insane. We now arrive at, if she had let him rob her, even at gunpoint, both likely would have survived. I almost don't know what to say here. I didn't expect Ford to be so blatant as to say that the woman should have just let someone rob her, but there it is. For all the talk of the left of privilege checking, there's a shocking lack of recognition from Ford that a young woman being approached by an armed man at night might recognize that there's a chance that the encounter won't end in just robbery. Ford brings things full circle by noting that to him, this all gets back to gun ownership. Most gun opponents are perfectly capable of understanding that gun ownership sometimes leads to good results, even if they believe the number of bad results outweigh those benefits. Ford couldn't even bring himself to acknowledge that anything good could spring from an object he despises. Again, Ford deserves credit for deleting the tweets and backtracking, but it shouldn't take a near legendary ratio to spark that revelation. And that, people, is the mindset of the opposition here. Those are the people we're trying to deal with. Those are the hardcore leftists. And yeah, I would bet my last dime that Ford fella is a leftist, considering he writes for Think Progress. This is the attitude that the hardcore leftists have, that it does not matter. You should not defend yourself because life is precious. But yet life isn't precious until it's outside the womb, apparently. Not that we're going to go down that rabbit hole, but still.
No, we're going down that rabbit hole on Tuesday.
Yeah, the March for Life was today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But this has got me really frustrated. I'm going to try to be poised. So if the guy would have killed her, what would you say? That's what I want to ask. I want to sit down. I want to sit down with this person and say.
Well, then they'd be crying about gun violence.
Well, then I would say, well, if she had a gun, she could have defended herself, just like
that
this
would have
just
been
happened.
Gun violence too, because a gun death is a gun death. Ah!
Okay, so if this
gun from the guy and used it on him,
if this 19-year-old man had decided to, I don't know, oh boy, let's see, decided to, I don't know, get drunk, get behind the wheel of a car, and drive himself into a telephone pole and kill himself, you'd say that was bad judgment, right?
Sure.
Well, robbing somebody at gunpoint is the same kind of bad judgment. He took a risk. He took a risk that that person was going to fight back. He took a risk that that person could be armed and could defend themselves. He's also taken a risk that even if they're unarmed and unable or unwilling to defend themselves, that if he lets that person live, they will be a witness against him and he could get arrested. So he might have robbed her and then killed her just so there's no witnesses.
But he only did it because of his socioeconomic circumstances and the fact that he was disadvantaged. She should have been more than willing to just give him the money that she was fortunate enough to acquire. She should have shared with him.
Yeah, this guy is such a coward.
The person who says that publicly, okay, then you go pay his bills. You pay all of his bills out of your own pocket, not out of a charity, not out of your organization.
That's what the government's
Don't ask for. No. The person who says we need to feel pity for these people because they've put themselves in a position need to be the ones paying those people's bills, not the hardworking Americans.
The guy is an absolute coward. And I don't know, was that part of the article that said that it gives the guy credit for deleting his tweets?
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever wrote that article can pound sand too. He's an absolute coward. If you mean it, say it. You don't get any credit for deleting your tweet. You meant it, leave the tweet up and be proud of that thing.
Stand by your words.
Coward.
Says, hey, she did give him some lead.
So you got to wonder, okay, so this guy, he sounds like he's somebody who can't get a woman, but if he is married, what if his wife was robbed and she did give in? She said, here's my purse, here's my keys, here's everything, right? Like that silly country song. And the robber decided to beat her within an inch of her life and left her for dead. And he comes to the emergency room and his wife's there in ICU and all this other stuff. And when she does come to, she says, I did what you said. I gave him everything, but he still did it. Would this guy be out there tweeting that, you know, we need to forgive these people and it's our fault and we need to, no, he'd probably be out there going, you know, why doesn't somebody do something? My wife almost died. But no, because it didn't happen to him, he's going to run his mouth like an armchair quarterback.
Yep. And that's, again, as I said, that's the utter lunacy and lack of any kind of sense that we're dealing with these people. You know, they're nuts.
Did I tell you all the story? It's very similar to this specific article. Did I tell you that story about the 4 kids tried to rob a pizza man where I live?
No.
4 kids with guns, all under 18, tried to rob a pizza man. Pizza man was packing. He lit them up.
Good for him.
3 of them dropped. The other one made it to the hospital. Okay. The mothers of the boys, you know what they said?
Oh, he should have never shot him.
Why'd you hurt my baby?
No. They
What'd
were
they
doing
say?
right, trying to survive.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I think is a lot of chicken hearts say. Survive. Let's be realistic. This is the United States of America. Survival is the easiest thing in the world to do here. You can do absolutely nothing and survive in America. All that survival talk is nonsense.
You got problems? You need money? Come on up to Michigan. I get you a job in the plastic factory with benefits. Now you ain't got to risk being a criminal robbing people.
That would require working. Why would they want to do that?
Yeah, I'm not going to work.
I had a conversation with a kid, not last night, night before, who got brought in on some warrants. And he was talking to me about how he's got a baby on the way and his kid's gonna be taken care of. I'm gonna take care of my kid. I'm gonna go out and get my money. Well, where you work? I ain't got no job. I don't need no job. Well, how are you gonna go out and get your money? Same way I always do. I'm gonna sell drugs. I'm gonna steal. I'm gonna rob people. Well, why would you want to do that? You know, because that's how I get money. I got a $700 watch. And that's why. And that's the mindset. You know, I got that $700 watch and I didn't do shit for it. I just pointed a gun at somebody. I'm going to get my money. I don't care if that means I'm taking it from you, but I'm going to get mine.
I hate cowards, man. I hate cowards.
That's the mentality anymore of a lot of the young kids out. Because I was talking, Rob is out here. You heard me. I'm not gonna go into all of it, but I was telling him and a bunch of people on Black Cats chat. You know, I'm not a parent. I don't have kids. A lot of the kids run around where I am. I'm more of a parent to them than their own parents are.
I have no doubt.
You know, and again, I don't have kids. I shouldn't be having to tell a kid, hey, listen, go do this, go do that, get you some money. Don't be stealing. Don't be standing on the corners selling stuff. You know what I mean? There are ways to do stuff.
You can ask their next door neighbor. The crack dealer walks out of his house, whether he's white, whether he's black, whether he's Mexican, it doesn't matter. Gay, straight, I don't care. None of that kind of stuff. Use Baltimore City, for example. One of the biggest crutches that people use for Baltimore City is look at the environment they've grown up in. Yeah, I'm looking at the environment they grow up in. I'm looking at the environment that the guy that lives right next door to him, that's got 2 little kids that he's trying his best to take care of, gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, then comes home at 9 o'clock at night and works his butt off and doesn't sell drugs and does things the right way and is still stuck in that community because he's just trying to get by. He did it. Why can't you? Because just like Budget said, screw that. That's too much work. That guy's got a Walmart watch on and I got a Rolex.
Yep. Absolutely right. You know, part of the problem is lack of parental involvement and lack of parental supervision completely. You know, the young man that I'm talking about, you ask him, all right, well, what's your address? And he gives the address. Well, okay, who's got custody of you? What do you mean? I live here with my friend. No, what? Your mom, your dad, what? I don't know who my dad is. Mom, she lives here. I guess she got custody, but I don't stay with her. I stay over here. And that's the problem. Parents not being involved whatsoever in their children's lives, letting them run wild and do whatever the hell they want. No father involved in the house. No nothing. No one to keep them in line except the police and people like me. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. That's why we get where we are. That's why we have these things we have, because no one is teaching these kids right and wrong. No one is teaching them that. They're just doing whatever they think they want to do and trying to get by, survive, quote unquote, in the easiest way possible. And they don't care if there are any consequences for anyone else, because nobody else is real to them. Nobody else matters. And that goes back to this young lady in this circumstance who was mugged at that bus stop by this 19-year-old man who I'm sure grew up in the same way of doing whatever he had to do, doing whatever he wanted to do, and not caring about the consequences to anybody else until it ends with him finally paying the consequences for it.
Well, I think
and then we have the left-leaning liberal moonbats saying, oh, well, she should have just gave it to him. No, somebody should have told him a long time ago that you actually have to go out and work for it.
Well, they talk about, it might have been the modern anti-federalist. I think he might have said it. I might have heard it somewhere else. But we were talking about the family structure being torn down. And, you always hear like the Gillette. There's probably, because he did a video on the Gillette thing. They blame toxic masculinity and rape culture and all this stuff about how bad men are. And then if you look at the statistics at how many single mothers there are raising kids, and take it easy. I'm not saying that a single mother can't raise a kid. Yes, she can. What I am saying is she's not supposed to do it by herself. You're supposed to have kids in a family structure. And if toxic masculinity is the problem, then maybe these women that are raising these boys are causing this toxic masculinity. Has anybody ever thought of that? Get the father back in the house, and a lot of this stuff will get cleared up.
Ding, 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 ding. You win the prize. Because you're absolutely right. Okay, I'm going to say something that there's no swear words in it, but it's going to be a little bit risque. Quit spreading your legs for losers, ladies.
It takes a man to make a man. You have to have a man there to teach a boy how to be a man. I
think both sides bear equal burden of responsibility.
Absolutely.
The guys that abandon their families, and I'm not talking about fight for their families and lose. I'm talking about literally just bail.
Yep.
Those guys they make us look bad. They're scum. And the women who go, I'm going to make a baby with this guy because I want welfare, or I'm going to make a baby with this guy because I like him because he's a bad boy, but knowing damn well he ain't going to stick around. He ain't a family man. He ain't going to take care of your kids.
Oh,
and ignoring the guy that would take care of your kids.
Bad boy is bad.
Yeah. Well, girls are attracted to it. I look, as many times as I've been married, I can tell you women are attracted to assholes.
What you're saying, Squid?
Hey, man, I am who I am. Deal with it. But so what I'm saying is, for all these feminists and all these guys who apparently left their man card, I don't know, in the ladies' room somewhere, men bear half the responsibility. Women bear half the responsibility. Work together and resolve it the way a man and a woman are supposed to work together to raise kids, or we can just keep going down this, and it's only going to get worse. And we're going to see generation after generation after generation get more and more confused, more and more lost, and we're going to have more and more kids showing up to budget's work and apparently not waxing the floors, and he has to do it.
That's right. Job security. Well, on the Chicago thing, there actually is a piece in the Chicago Tribune that makes some sense on it. It's by Delene Glanton from the Chicago Tribune. Column: She shot a robber with her legal gun, just as concealed carry was intended. It's easy to hate guns. There's not much about them to love, except when they save an innocent life. Though the U.S. Supreme Court has confirmed every law-abiding American's right to own a firearm, most anti-gun people have never quite understood why anyone would want to walk around with one. Perhaps it was because they didn't really want to understand it. On this politically polarizing issue, everyone has taken sides. People believe what they choose to believe about firearms, and they block out what anyone on the other side has to say. Most of us have been guilty of that at one time or another. But a shooting happened early Tuesday at a bus stop on the far south side of Chicago that might prompt us to look at guns in a new light. I, too, am a public transportation rider. That could have been me waiting on a bus that morning. It could have been anyone. Video from a surveillance camera posted outside a store nearby shows a young woman standing underneath a bus shelter shortly before 6 a.m., apparently on her way to work. The video shows her waiting unsuspectingly for the bus to arrive. Then, for some reason, the camera stops recording. When it resumes, a young man is seen running away and the young woman getting up off the ground. 19-year-old Le'Veon Goings Jr. pulled a gun and tried to rob the woman, authorities said. There was a struggle, but she managed to pull her own .38 caliber handgun and shoot him in the chest. Goings ran home a few blocks away and collapsed in the stairwell of his building. He died an hour later at a hospital. According to authorities, the shooter was a 25-year-old woman, and lucky for her, she had a permit to carry a concealed weapon in Illinois. When she obtained the license, it was unlikely that the woman ever thought she'd really have to use it. Though she lives in a neighborhood where residents say such holdups are common, she probably never fathomed that she would end up shooting a teenager to death either. That is the last thing most people would ever want to do. But in this case, she apparently had no choice. That's how the concealed carry law is supposed to work. I have never doubted that the majority of people who go through the trouble of obtaining a license to legally carry a firearm in Illinois are decent and responsible. And in neighborhoods where violence is rampant, it makes good sense. Years of covering Illinois gun issues gave me a deep level of understanding and respect for the laws, even though I don't agree with all of them. Illinois entered, kicking and screaming, into the agreements to afford citizens their Second Amendment rights in 2013. In a city where there are so many killings involving illegal guns, the reluctance is understandable. Every illegal gun used on the streets was once a legal gun. It is the responsibility of the legal gun owners to ensure that their weapons remain only in the hands of those they were intended for. I don't necessarily agree that. There are sometimes it's beyond their control when they come break in your house and steal your crap and cut through your locks and et cetera, et cetera. But I digress. In Chicago, we know that doesn't always happen. We also know that not every concealed carry license holder who has shot someone was right to fire the weapon. Our laws aren't perfect in Illinois, but they are among the best around. On that far south side street Tuesday morning, there was a battle between a legal gun and an illegal gun, between a gun owner who had undergone a background check and 16 hours of training and someone who wasn't supposed to have a firearm. Goings had multiple arrests, mostly for drug charges, but also for attacking 2 police officials during a narcotics raid in Englewood. In October, 6 counts of aggravated robbery to a police officer were dropped after he pleaded guilty to a drug charge. He was on probation at the time he was killed. No one should be happy when a teenager is killed, regardless of how imperfect he was. But in this case, it is difficult to feel sorry for Goings. In this battle of good versus evil, he was the villain and she is the hero. We applaud her for refusing to become yet another innocent victim of Chicago's gun violence. It is possible that the shooting will haunt this young woman emotionally for a very long time. Killing someone, regardless of the circumstances, is not easy for most people. It is likely that she has already shed many tears over taking a young man's life. When the Chicago Tribune contacted her Wednesday, she didn't want to talk about it. Perhaps one day she will know that there is no guilt in saving your own life. And perhaps the rest of us will stop judging those so harshly who feel they must carry a legal gun to do so. You know, this is someone who is not a gun person, obviously. This is someone who is very obviously, I would say, leaning towards the anti-gun side, who in this instance understands and has a glimpse of why we do what we do and why we carry what we carry and why we're prepared the way we're prepared and why we have some vigilance. This is someone who is allowing the facts and logic and reason to come to a fairly sensible opinion on it. And, Seven says he's surprised the editor approved that story. So am I. This is coming from the Chicago Tribune. So the fact that this column exists and was published gives me a little bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, we can reach some folks and win this fight.
Are there any statistics out there that say how often, we'll say, the good guy with a gun calls the police after they shoot somebody or fire or draw or whatever?
No.
Same thing with the police. We were giving the police a little bit of a hard time earlier because sometimes they deserve it. But how about when the cop shoots somebody and then when the ambulance shows up, the cop that did the shooting is giving the person CPR? Just like this lady. I don't know the story behind this lady, but I'd imagine that after she shot the person that was trying to rob her, she probably called the cops and stayed there until the cops showed up and answered all the cops' questions and did everything that the cops and the lawyers told her to do and showed up on time for court and showed up on time for her meeting with her lawyers and whatever kind of other legal stuff she had to do. I'd like to see if there's any statistics at all that a legal gun owner shoots somebody in self-defense and just leaves the person there to die. I bet it's probably as close to zero as you could possibly get.
Probably. What I can tell you in this case, though, is that January to date in Chicago, according to HeyJackass.com, shot and killed 12, shot and wounded 65, total shot 77, total homicides 14. And she's not one of them because she had the means, method, and opportunity to defend herself.
And for roll call, I say very cool. Is the self-defense is always his favorite part.
And that, that would have been a great segue. I should have reordered these stories differently because now we're going to move on to Oregon Democrats push 5-round limit for ammunition magazines. They're being idiots out there. Oregon State Representative Andrea Salinas and State Senator Rob Wagner are pushing legislation to limit ammunition magazines to no more than 5 rounds. The Statesman Journal reports that the idea for limiting magazines to 5 rounds came from a group of gun control proponents called Students for Change. They decided such a limitation was a good response to the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School attack in Parkland, Florida. The legislation, Senate Bill 501, also limits the amount of ammunition an individual can buy and requires would-be gun purchasers to obtain a permit before getting a gun. Now, what they're not telling you is that this ammo limit is to 20 rounds a month. Is what they're trying to push out there. 20 rounds a month, and you have to get a background check before you can get the damn 20 rounds of ammunition. And not just 20 rounds in a month, 20 rounds in a 30-day period. So if you get it buy 20 rounds on the 15th, you're not buying 20 more till the 16th of the next month. That's ridiculous. Yeah, the NRA ILA reports that ammunition purchase limits would mean that Oregon residents could buy no more than 20 rounds every 30 days. Of course, criminals who acquire their rounds and ammo on the black market, their guns and ammo on the black market, would not be impacted by the limitations. So if you are an Oregonian, you need to be on the ball on this one. Your lawmakers have apparently gone crazy and are asking high school students to draft legislation because that's what happened. They had a committee that had these Students for Change, which are a bunch of high school students, in there helping them write the law.
Seeing how I am wearing my tinfoil hat at the time and it fits very comfortably, I'll go ahead and say this. How about all the revenue that Walmart's going to lose? and all the revenue that your local gun store is going to lose, and all the revenue that any of the internet dealers are going to lose.
They don't
And then not just the fact that Walmart's not going to sell ammo, but also Walmart's not going to sell those pair of gloves that I bought while I went in to go get ammo, or this pair of sunglasses, or that candy bar, because I'm not going to Walmart anymore. But that leads back to Budget's point always. It's about control. It's about getting all the guns. They don't care if Walmart goes bankrupt, because I understand Walmart's not going bankrupt if you take the bullets out, but just play along with me. Walmart loses a bunch of business. They don't care about that because there's no more bullets in the store.
I have one question for you, David. Was that candy bar you bought a Slim Jim?
Actually, it was a hot dog sandwich candy bar, so the Slim Jim was there.
All right. Well, you know, though, this is a question I ask all the time, mostly to myself, because, I don't know, nobody else wants to hear it. What's up with the gun manufacturers? What's up with the ammo manufacturers? What's up with the target manufacturers? What's up with all these people that come out of the woodwork after Sandy Hook and started becoming instructors and making easy money teaching classes? And what's with all these other people that are making money off the firearms industry? Why aren't they in here fighting harder than the gun owners? Because these are the people who have the livelihoods to lose. Yes, you can, if you're already an established, successful company, you can change your product lineup. You can change what sort of training you do. You can change how you manufacture your ammo. You can do this, you can do that. All that costs money and takes time. Now, sure, it does reinvigorate and, you know, keep your name out there and stuff like that. But overall, when you're talking about something like this that's going to affect volume, every ammo manufacturer in the country should be flooding money into Oregon going, I mean, let alone Walmart, you know, I mean, yeah, we know Dick's Sporting Goods isn't going to put any money in the fight, but why isn't every ammo manufacturer in the company, why isn't Brownells and Midway and Natchez and all of them pumping every penny they can get to more or less to keep themselves from losing all that revenue? So the first thing I would think as a business person is I would want to talk to my salespeople and go, what percentage of our annual sales come out of Oregon? If the number is high, because I've heard a lot of gun manufacturers say, believe it or not, most of our customers are in California. And I'm thinking, well, then where are all these mythical gun owners in California? Why aren't they showing up to vote? That's a whole other thing. But if the numbers are fairly good,
by the illegals that are voting.
Yeah. If the numbers are fairly good for Oregon as far as business, if there's some sort of statistics that these companies can look at, whether you be a manufacturer, distributor, or the endpoint retailer, that should be motivation for you to go and lawyer up and fight, because these companies have resources that you and I do not have. And any of these companies, and I don't mean small startups, and I don't mean somebody who's doing it out of their garage or in some shed in Montana and then saying, well, we have to sell the rifles for $5,000 because we make them by hand. I'm talking about the big companies, the companies that have been around for a long time, the established companies, the companies that are opening up multiple locations and building more factories because there's more demand. They're opening up more warehouses and things like that because there's more demand. Where have these companies been? Where are they?
Maybe they're already there. I don't know. I haven't seen any numbers. I don't know if they publicize it or not.
Well, they got the money.
I was asking that question the other day on somebody's chat. Like, I'm subscribed to Ruger in every way that I think I can. I'm on their Instagram. I'm on their YouTube channel. I get their newsletter, and I've never seen them say anything. Now,
what? You're a fan of Ruger?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? No one would have ever guessed. But now I haven't looked back to see what they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. But the year or so that I've been involved, I haven't seen one letter come from Ruger and say, hey, you know, our Second Amendment's under attack. Here's what we're doing about it.
So let me tell you what they did a few years ago, because I like Ruger as well. I think they make a great product.
Thankfully, Bill's no longer in charge.
Well, yeah. Bill had his own whatever, but you know, I can't badmouth him too much. He's a fellow brother Marine. So, point being is, a few years ago they hooked up with the NRA and they said, if we sell so many million guns this year,
Yes.
we'll donate so many $1 million to the NRA. More or less, they lockstep with the NRA and said, we'll make you money if you help us make money. So they were trying to convince their customers to buy more of their product so they could put more money into the NRA. More or less, it was a win-win for the NRA and Ruger. It really didn't benefit the customer. Now, I'm not going to lie. I bought a couple extra Rugers because what they did was they extended it. They're like, our numbers are so good, we're going to extend this. And I think they ended up running it 1.5 years or 2 years instead of just 1 year. But at the end of the day, that really didn't have a big impact on the community as far as fighting for our rights. Now, the NRA does this, they do that, and they don't do enough, and people can have whatever. But the whole point is, really, what they should have been doing is not putting it into NRA, the GOA, or any of that. They should have been lawyering up themselves, having their corporate lawyers go into some of these states and challenge some of this stuff and go, hey, don't worry, we're Ruger, and by the way, we're a multi-billion-dollar company. We got this. But they're not.
I don't know why they don't. The Tactical Pickle says many of us California gun owners are too afraid to show themselves.
That was,
tried to get help, but they rather hide, thinking that if the government doesn't know about them, then they won't be affected by the confiscations.
Calaveras, I know that. I actually have, I have some acquaintances that come from California, and they've been living here for decades, and they're paranoid to let anybody know about any of the guns that they own. Every now and then they'll hint around about this or that, and I've seen a few things in their house, but they keep it under, because even though Michigan is free and they don't have to worry about the problems they had, they grew up with that, they lived with it for a long time, and even living here for almost 30 years, they're still scared crapless that the government's coming for their guns. And California gun laws 30 years ago were not as bad as they are today. So yeah, I know all about the whole not wanting to show your face because you're afraid to come get you. And it sucks. But in some cases, some people need to take some risks. I'm not saying take all the risks. I mean, you guys heard me on air say, I ain't going to be the first one to get arrested. I got kids that need me. But, yeah.
Well, Remington and Winchester, just throw those two out there, could help out with the whole FUD issue as well. Because if Remington came out and was like, look, we're not going to be able to make shotguns anymore if any of this stuff goes down, all those guys that only care about turkey hunting or whatever kind of hunting they want to do with their shotgun are going to be like, uh-oh, I can't go hunting this year because they're going to stop making my guns. Yeah, it's just a thought.
I mean, come on. What are I would love for the sportsmen and hunters to wake up to the fact that those semi-auto shotguns they like for turkey hunting and deer hunting and shooting trap and skeet and sporting clays and all of that stuff. Those are still semi-autos. You are a fool if you don't think they're going to come to. Where do you think they're going after they get the semi-auto rifles? Where do you think? And speaking of semi-auto rifles, your semi-auto deer rifle, you don't think they're going to come after that once they get the AR-15? You don't think that once they get the semi-auto rifles, they're going to go after the bolt guns that can shoot long range? You know, you guys with the that do the long range competition shooting, you don't think they're going to come with after those high-powered sniper rifles after they get the rest of them? You're nuts. You're crazy. They're coming for you too. They're just coming for you later.
Just tell them to look at what happened in United Kingdoms when they had that shooting at a school in, what was it, 86, 89?
Yeah.
They said registration. Then they banned all semi-autos. Then they went after hunting rifles and shotguns. And they went after handguns. And nobody had anything.
I read the other day that they arrested a dude in London because they looked in his back. The cops looked in his back seat and saw some butter knives that had blades over 2 inches. So they arrested him and got those knives off the streets, by God.
Yeah, it's a good
butter
thing.
Knives!
It's a good thing all those British lost their lives fighting those tyrannical Nazis, you know. And what I mean by that is they're becoming tyrannical Nazis over in the UK.
Yeah, I used to work for the Europeans, and the socialism, it'll drive you up a wall because it's a very anti-American thing. So when you see our own people wanting to act like that and saying, we need to do it like Europe because Europe is better, it just makes me sick. We broke away from Europe for a reason. People left Europe in droves to come over here to become citizens for a reason. Yes, I understand we're a melting pot, and yes, I understand we embrace some of the culture because that's our background. And I understand there are even Americans that did not come from Europe, even though majority of the country, the origin is from Europe, and the country started out Judeo-Christian. Sorry for all those who are offended, but that's one of the reasons we're free, is because we came from an industrialized, civilized part of the world, and we had Christian beliefs. And when we turn away from the fact that it didn't work over 200 years ago, and well, actually, really over the past 200 years, and people have been flocking in here like crazy, you really need to take a look and say, what makes America America? Why are we so great? And not want to adopt the European principles, and not want to, butter knives, frickin' butter knives. Yeah.
Butter knives, David.
Meanwhile, they're letting Osama in the back door and giving him free health care.
There was even a picture from recently where they looked in someone's back seat. Again, they're going around, apparently English police are going around looking in people's back seats, and they found a blunt training sword from some poor reenactor. They confiscated that and put him in jail too, because you can't have a sword, a blunt one. I mean, you could see on it that this thing was basically just a steel board. It wasn't even sharp, no taper to it, no nothing. It was a freaking blunt training sword. So they went ahead and they arrested him too and got that sword off the streets, even though it wasn't much of a weapon because it was missing the pommel and whatnot. So yeah, that's where these people want to take us, to where they'll go around looking in your car, see if you got a butter knife over 2.5 inches, oh my glob, that's the world's an end. You're a freaking criminal mastermind and a danger to society, and you have to be put away.
You can hear it in the department. What, butter knives? It was a curved sword, I tell you, a curved sword.
Yeah, a dagger. I was reading the 2013 Maryland gun control laws, and I've read it probably 10 times in my life, well, since it came out. And I noticed last night a very interesting phrase that has been used again here recently. And I thought the first time I heard it recently, I thought it was a new thing, and I even mentioned it on this show. But our wonderful, wonderful former Governor Martin O'Malley used the term assault pistol. And
yeah,
that's back in 2013. And that's a assault pistol. Hey, hunters, trap shoot guys, anybody out there who's got a bow and arrow, pay attention, because if they can make up assault pistol, your assault compound bow is next.
Budget, you better hide that at collateral.
Yeah, your assault atlatl.
Yes, that's right. When they outlaw atlatls, only outlaws will have atlatls.
And back in the Scottish times, in the old English times, the English didn't let the Scottish carry any form of weapon whatsoever.
Nope.
So if you had a big stick, that's considered a weapon, and you better get rid of it, or you're going to end up hurting or dead. So it will happen again. Going back to England, you can't have a butter knife. Come on now.
But that's what a lot of people just don't seem to understand, that we're here joking about this. We're saying this, but on the other hand, we're not joking. This is what the hoplophobes want. This is what the leftists, the socialists, this is what they want. They want us to be completely unarmed and unable to resist their imposition of their version of what they want the world to be on us.
What I've heard before, more than once, is if they disarm us, not only can we never resist the government, but we're also going to be at the mercy of the criminals who, like has been said before, will not obey the laws, and they will be armed. And then the government will say, oh, okay, you're being attacked by criminals and you have no equalizer. Don't worry, we're the government, we'll protect you. And then people go, oh, okay. And they're more dependent on the government to protect them, even though the government isn't. And it just goes in some circle.
Exactly. They want us to be dependent.
For everybody out there that hates Donald Trump and is going to vote against him, please hold on tight, because your boy Beto O'Rourke is already going around talking about how the Constitution's invalid and we don't really need it. They've already put a bill on the floor to get rid of the the electoral college. So all the kind of stuff that our democracy, that nobody's coming after your guns, nobody's coming at, yeah, there are bills every day going across that House floor getting proposed to take away every little stitch of our freedom. So think about that in 2020 when you're pissed off that Donald Trump banned the bump stock or didn't get the wall built or whatever. I go
Even
back to
worse.
holding your nose and voting for the lesser of two evils. I'm a Trump supporter, absolutely not ashamed to admit it, but I'm also not ashamed to admit that the guy pisses me off a whole lot. But in 2020, I'm striking the little box next to his name.
Even worse, Michael Bloomberg is seriously considering a presidential run in 2020. He could
I think
buy
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. Ugh.
No, from what
Matt?
I was listening to Armed American Radio the other day, and Mark Walters is saying that Bloomberg is considering putting $200 million of his own dollars into his campaign fund from his own wallet. He doesn't need funding from anybody. $200 million. You don't think he can buy the presidency for $200 million worth of publicity and advertising? And hell, he's not even going to have to pay for advertising because the media is going to be you thought them fawning over Obama was bad. Ew, that's nothing compared to what they'll do to Bloomberg. And Bloomberg has been the financial backer of every gun control measure we've had in the last, I don't know how long, in the last several years at least.
NEA Matt mentioned
it's coming. We have to get up. That's why I'm so fired up about this. We have to get up off our asses and fight. All of us, every gun owner. There's a lot of people that say, well, we shouldn't have to be political. Let's just talk about guns and like guns. Being a gun owner in today's society is an inherently political act. Everyone who is a gun owner must get up and make their voice heard. That's why I say this every freaking week, that we have to get up, and use whatever carrier pigeons, blah, blah, blah. I throw some humor in there, but the fact is we have to be on it constantly because there is no one going to save us but us. That's why we have to support the organizations that are working towards it. We have to support the gun owners of America. We have to support the Second Amendment Foundation. We have to support our local and state firearms organizations. And yes, even though many people don't like them, we have to support the NRA too. We have to support all of them. We have to be on it constantly and doing as much as we possibly can to try to fight these people because they have unlimited wealth to throw at it.
NEA Matt mentioned it the other day on his chat. And just for full disclosure, I don't agree with everything Matt says, but he was right on point about this. And I've been feeling it since the midterms. Before the midterms, I'd have bet you any amount of money in the world Donald Trump was going to come very close to Reagan's record in his reelection. I thought it was an absolute runaway. No way anybody on planet Earth could beat Donald Trump. I don't feel that way anymore. And we all have to get out of our being complacent and do like Budget said and get off your rump and get involved and get active, however you choose to do it, to do something that's going to be positive toward the Second Amendment and your gun owners' rights, your arms. Not arms or everything. They want to disarm us completely. So what Matt was saying was you can't be complacent because you don't think Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. You didn't think Donald Trump could beat Hillary Clinton either. Who knows what's going to happen in this election. I'd like to think Donald Trump's going to run away with it and make the world great again, but he could very well lose, and we could be in a world of trouble.
Yeah. And Budget, I think the Mountain Dew's kicking in.
I think it did too.
I'm just saying from one caffeine
finally got going.
From one caffeine induced kind of person to another. I can hear it. You're good. You're good.
Psycho 316 says voting for Trump is not helping the Second Amendment. Well, you know what? It damn sure is helping the Second Amendment when compared to voting for Hillary or voting for Bloomberg or voting for Elizabeth Warren or voting for Kamala Harris or voting for Beto O'Rourke or voting for any of the others that the socialists are going to throw up. Is Trump perfect? No, not at all. But he is far better than the alternatives. I would rather have another term of President Trump than even 60 days of President Bloomberg.
Look, if Donald Trump loses, we're going to be begging for Obama back. You get Bloomberg or Elizabeth Warren in the presidency, Kamala Harris, any of these psychopaths, and we'll be begging we had Barack Obama back. Mark my words. I love Psycho. I absolutely
me
respect
too.
him completely, and I know everybody in the chat does. I just disagree with him on that. I think I hate to say it, and a lot of guys disagree with me on it, but you vote for that third party candidate, you're wasting your vote.
That's why we had Bill Clinton, because Ross Perot. And I'm not.
Well, just for the record, Matt voted for the third party candidate.
That's what I said earlier.
He did. Yeah, he changed a lot of. At first, it was vote Republican, vote Pro. And then it was like, no, vote third party. We need to get third party. Then it was, if you don't think that your state's going to lose Republican, then vote third party, because we're trying to get their numbers up. Or if you think there's no way you can win Republican, then vote third party.
Too important.
And then after the election, he kind of was pro-Trump, then he was against Trump, then he was pro-Trump, then he was against Trump. So, it's kind of hard to make for any of us to make our decisions. Matt, Psycho, you, me, any of us.
I just want to say that I apologize if it came across like I was yelling at you. It's just
no, he's amped up
on all this.
He's amped up on Mountain Dew. Take it from me. Why do you guys think I get the way I get? Well, that's one of many reasons. But anyhow, it's really hard for any of us to make.
Psycho says this is why nothing will ever change, and I agree. Really, I do. But at this point in history, we have too much to lose by voting third party.
Right.
I think hold our nose and vote for Trump, because he is going to do far less damage to the Second Amendment than Bloomberg would.
I want to see a third and a fourth party. I don't really think we need more than 4. I hear, like in Israel, they have 16 parties, and it's a mess. But I'd like to see more than just 2 parties. And I think that under the right circumstances, we can get a third party in. When, what was the crazy guy in 92? Ross Perot. Ross Perot was running.
Second sound.
Yeah. Okay. He stood a chance. He's probably been one of the best. He did sit, but what he did was he ended up stealing votes away from Bush Sr. And that's how Clinton won. And then Clinton gets in and he does the assault weapons ban. And you guys can say, well, Bush Sr. was no friend of the Second Amendment because of 922R and blah, blah, blah. 922R is nothing compared to a damn assault weapons ban. All right. So you're going to understand, all these politicians are crooked. All these politicians don't care about what we want as much as what's going to get them reelected. And all these politicians have a legacy to keep up and all this other stuff. They're never going to do everything you like. A lot of people hate Reagan because of the Hughes Amendment. But the Hughes Amendment was thrown on the FOPA, and he got us FOPA, even though states don't honor it. They should. And he was promised that the Hughes Amendment part of FOPA would get fought in court, and then it wasn't.
Nope.
And then you could say, well, I hate him for that. Okay, he won the Cold War. And if you were born after the Cold War, you have no freaking clue how close we come to getting nuked for decades. He won the Cold War.
There is no more Soviet Union.
Right. So you got to take the good with the bad with every politician. Every politician. And I think that's what David and Budget are trying to say is, even though Trump is not perfect, you got to take the good with the bad, and you've got to look at the big picture, and you've got to swallow some pride, and you do have to take it in the butt a couple times, because they're gonna pass some laws that you don't like. They're gonna do something. You're never gonna get it perfect. You're never ever gonna get it perfect. But when you vote for the third party, right now the way things are, you're gonna take votes away from somebody who's not gonna do as much damage. How's that? I'm not going to promise that they're going to get us our rights back. They're not going to do as much damage. At one point, we will be able to get a third party in there. It still isn't the time. Things have got to change drastically for us to be able to do that. So long term, that's the way to go.
If you want to make change as far as third party or even fourth party, you need to start voting third party in your local elections. That's where you need to do it first, because you need to get the local elections seated with the third party, to where the third party then becomes so big that it's not a third party anymore. It's not an underdog anymore. If 90% of the local politicians become libertarians, libertarian just got huge. Trying to do it at the national level first is foolish.
Most of the third party candidates are nut jobs anyway. Let's be honest. if you're gonna say Gary Johnson was a viable candidate for presidency, then you and I have a very long discussion we need to have. Yeah, Jill Stein. Come on, what about Jill Stein makes you think that she would have made a good president? You know, and believe me, you can have your own choice. I'm not telling anybody how to think, how to feel. You know, I respect your decision, and I'd love to really have the discussion about what either one of those third-party candidates would have done for the United States in a positive way.
Yeah. Just the fact is that there's no way that a third party is going to win the presidency right now because they don't have the broad enough base.
And also look at this. David is looking at the big picture, and he's swallowing some pride and some other stuff with this, because what he's talking about, and this isn't a political ad, but it sure does sound like it. But what he's saying is he's voting that way, even though, what are you always saying? You're talking about the Republicans don't care about us either. There's lots of rhinos out there, but you're looking at the big picture. Like I said before, you're not going to get everything you want. You're just not. It doesn't matter who you elect. But if you can elect somebody who's going to do less damage, they're all going to do damage. Who's going to do the least amount of damage? Who is going to do something that may, somewhere down the road, allow us to gain an advantage? So you gotta really look at big picture. If you haven't been around long enough, if you haven't been old enough to vote long enough, if you haven't given a shit long enough, then you don't have a whole lot of perspective. But if you've been in the fight for a while and you've been looking around and seeing things, you start to see patterns. You have a little bit more experience to build off of. So at the end of the day, you still have to make up your mind for yourself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this isn't about guns for me. You know, I've said it a couple of times before. I've been in the firearms full time since September 17th of 2017. So when I bought my first rifle, I became a gun owner, and I started really getting involved in specifically the Second Amendment. But the day before I got my rifle, I loved freedom. And I've always loved freedom and the principles that this country were set up on. Maybe not all the actions that were set up on. I disagree with some of the things that we did to get where we are. People make mistakes, it happens. But the principle behind we the people, you know, the right to keep and bear arms, I can't remember the part where the pursuit of happiness, there's the one I was looking for. That's what it means to me. And that's why, you know, we can't also pigeonhole this Second Amendment thing is just about guns. The Second Amendment thing is about freedom. It's absolute freedom.
Exactly. You're touching on something that I've said over and over again, and I'm sure I will say again, is that the Second Amendment is the linchpin of the entire Constitution. It's what gives teeth to the rest of it. It's what protects the rest of the Constitution, is the fact that we, the people, have the ability to resist tyranny. That's why it's there. You know, we talk about self-defense, and resisting tyranny is self-defense. We're defending ourselves from the tyranny of those who would oppress us. But that's the main part of it. The founders had just gone through a long, bloody war over these issues that you're talking about. And that's why the enemies of the Second Amendment want to get rid of it, so that we can't resist tyranny, the tyranny of socialism that they want to impose. You know, I know I go off on socialism and communism and whatnot, and I'm starting to sound like frickin' Joe McCarthy, but the facts are the facts. You know, we have avowed socialists in Congress right now, many of them sitting on the House Ways and Means Committee. The committee that decides how much of your paycheck you get to keep, to steal a phrase from Mark Walters, that's why they want to get rid of the Second Amendment. That's why they want us disarmed, so that they can do whatever they want and we can't do anything about it. That's why our founders put the Second Amendment in there. And that's why it was the Second Amendment, because it's that important.
Let me read this real quick too, and I'll be quick about it.
Sure, go ahead.
And this is going to be very familiar, and this is the point that I think that we're all trying to make here. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of the nature of God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinion of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. Right there, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with one another. That's what we're talking about in this making this vote thing and getting up. And it's written in our constitution. Our country is based on when the people in power start doing what we don't like, we can get rid of them. And if it comes down to it, I hate to say it, we'll force them out. But I don't think it's time to force them out. I think that if we continue
Not yet.
to stay strong with one another and keep pushing the message forward and stay active, don't be defensive anymore, but be active, then we can dissolve the political bonds which have connected us together. And right now, the political bonds which are connecting us together are corrupted and evil, and they're poisoning all of us. It's disgusting, and thank God that the founding fathers put that in there as well, to say when the people who you put in charge don't do the right thing, get rid of them.
That's right. And ultimately, it's the soap box, the ballot box, and the cartridge box.
This country belongs to us, not them. This country belongs to the poor conservatives, Seven Wonders, Rob D, Squibb, Stealth, Matt Davis. I'm not even going to read any more names out there, but Calaveras. This is our country. This is not Donald Trump's country. This is not Hillary Clinton's country. This is our country. And they cannot take it from us. If we give it to them, they're going to take it, just like the devil. Whether you're religious, spiritual, or not, the devil only has enough the power that you give him. Same thing with Washington, D.C. Satan down in Washington only has the power that we give him.
That's right. They can only take our country from us if we allow it. And that's why we have the Second Amendment, so that we choose whether we allow them to do it or not. And we have the means, method, and opportunity to defend ourselves from the tyranny they wish to impose upon us. And speaking of means, method, and opportunity to defend ourselves, we're going to go ahead and segue right into the final segment of the show. What Roll Call loves the most? The self-defense shout-outs. For those of you who are new to the show or who haven't stuck around till the end, which if you've stuck around from beginning to the end tonight, you are a true fan and a trooper, and my hat is off to you, because we're going on 2 hours. Well, we're just past 2 hours here. Anyway, self-defense shout-outs is not where I am reveling in the death or injury of the bad guy. It is where I am reveling in the fact that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to defend themselves from the bad guy, that they were able to protect their own lives from those who would do them harm. I don't know how I missed this one last week, but this usually I only do self-defense stories that have happened within the past 7 days, but I extended it for this one because I like this one a whole lot. Private security officer stopped shooting suspect at Huntsville nightclub. This is from January 3rd by Sydney Martin from WAAYTV.com. The private security officer, called a hero by Huntsville police, shared her story after she stopped a man from entering a Huntsville nightclub with an AK-47. The security officer shot Samuel Williams, who is facing multiple charges, including possession of a firearm by a felon. Private security officer Latoya said she was working at Club 3208 early Monday morning when a fight happened inside. Williams had to be removed from the club. Latoya explained when Williams was removed from the nightclub, he went to a car in the parking lot and retrieved an AK-47 and started shooting. Outside, we did our job as security and made sure that everyone was back, and there was no one outside but the person and security, she explained. Latoya said she was the only armed security guard at the club, and she knew she had to take action. He started to make moves towards the door. He was still firing off shots. I decided that I had to make a choice to go ahead and stop him from entering the club. I was behind a vehicle right here at this first handicap parking spot and basically just maneuvered around the vehicle as he maneuvered around the other side of it to make sure I was properly concealed and covered, she added. That's when she shot at Williams, hitting him at least once, and then worked to make sure he was okay. I'm not here to kill anyone. I saw one of the entry wounds was on his thigh, which can sometimes be a somewhat dangerous place to bleed out. I keep a trauma kit and tourniquet on me, as everyone who carries should, she said. Williams got into a car and was taken to the hospital before LaToya was able to render him aid, and that's where police caught up with him and placed him under arrest. Thankfully, he's still alive today. One day he's going to have the opportunity to make better choices, she added. LaToya said she hopes this shooting doesn't stop people from coming to the nightclub. I'm just glad no one else was hurt. That's all I care about, she said. LaToya told us she's an independent security officer certified through the state. She told us she has been an armed security officer for about 2 years, and she's worked at multiple clubs in the area. Too bad she wasn't working at Parkland, because she gets it. Good for her. I watched on that website from WAAYTV.com. I encourage you to go there and check it out. Watch the video of her. That woman comes across as cool, collected, and professional. I think she's great. Good for her. Next up, from Berlin Township, Pennsylvania, from WNEP.com by Brittany Hayes. Police, 90-year-old homeowner shot intruder in the leg. Berlin Township, PA. A man from Milanville is facing charges after he tried to break into a home in Wayne County. According to police, Adam Gillott, 36, tried to break into a home in Berlin Township around 3 a.m. Friday because he wanted a cigarette. Gillott allegedly repeatedly banged on the door, and when the homeowner, a 90-year-old man, came to the door, he told Gillott to leave. Police say Gillott told the homeowner he was going to come inside anyway. The homeowner then shot Gillott in the leg with a revolver, went inside, and called the police. Officers say that when they arrived, they found Gillott on the porch and transported him to a nearby hospital. Charges will be filed against Gillott in Wayne County. So I guess that the 90-year-old man should have let that guy in there to do whatever he wanted to, and possibly get killed himself because some idiot wanted a cigarette. You know, that's what that fellow on Twitter talking about the mugger would have said. But I say, good on him for being willing to defend himself. Next one's from Richmond, Virginia, from January 16th, from WTVR.com by John Burkett. Richmond clerk fires gun at knife-carrying robber. I had to take action. 3 people were arrested after a convenience store robbery Tuesday night, 2 brothers and their female friend. The question now facing investigators, are they linked to more than a dozen knife robberies in Metro Richmond over the past 2 weeks? And if so, which brother came close to being seriously hurt by a clerk with a gun? It just took me back, said Elias Haddad. It took me back to what happened before. Included in that frightening string of robberies was an attempted robbery at the Cary Street Mini Mart by a man with a knife. That terrible incident brought back bad memories for Haddad. My dad got hit before and got stabbed in the neck, he said Wednesday. On Sunday, Haddad's wife was working the register when a knife-wielding robber suddenly stormed in. In the video, which is now evidence, you can see the robber was surprised by Haddad, who makes it look like he's complying, then pulls out a gun and fires, Crime Insider sources told John Burkett. The would-be robber ducks and runs. With him threatening my wife and threatening me again when he saw me, I had to take action, said Haddad. When someone threatens you with a knife, you don't know what they're capable of doing. And learning that police believe the same man he shot also robbed a Chesterfield 7-Eleven a few hours after the Cary Street store, not shot, made Haddad nervous until Tuesday night. He displayed a knife, demanded money from a clerk at the register, and then fled on foot with an undisclosed amount of cash. Undercover officers were quickly on the suspect's trail, Crime Insider sources say. After a traffic stop and a short foot chase in Powhatan, brothers Michael and Joseph Carter, along with Brittany Matthews, were all arrested. They were charged with several felonies, including robbery of the Deer Run BP station, and now investigators are sorting out more than a dozen other robberies to see if they're connected. I hope nobody ever has to go through this again because these type of robberies don't leave a good feeling, said Haddad. Investigators hope to clear a bunch of robbery cases with the arrest of this Powhatan trio, Crime Insider sources told Burkett. So good for him. Defend your wife, defend yourself, defend your property, defend your life from those who would deprive you of any of it. And finally, this one you may have heard about, Kingpin. This is from Elizabeth Janney from Patch.com. Armed robber shot in store holdup, Baltimore police. Police said a store robbery led to a shooting Saturday night in southeast Baltimore. Police said a store owner shot an armed robber Saturday night in southeast Baltimore. The suspect ran from the scene and collapsed nearby, according to authorities. Southeast District Patrol officers were called to the 2300 block of Fleet Street for a report of a shooting at 7:29 p.m. on Saturday, January 12th. When they arrived, officers said they talked to a store employee who told the man he had walked into the business with a gun and announced a robbery. Told them a man had walked into the business with a gun and announced a robbery. The employee was also armed with a gun and shot the suspect, police reported. According to WJZ, the store where the shooting occurred was House of Spirits. Authorities said the suspect left and collapsed in the 500 block of Collington Avenue. He was hospitalized with serious injuries after the shooting, Fox 45 reported. Apparently, if you go to rob the House of Spirits, yours might leave your body, which is a good thing. So there we go, folks.
Yeah, I know where that place is at.
Several instances where people have been confronted by someone who would do them harm, and they had the ability and the determination to defend themselves from those who would do them ill. And that is how it should be. Thank you. Thanks a lot for stopping in, everybody. I very much appreciate it. You know, I appreciate you guys here on the panel for coming in and giving me and the rest of us your perspectives on the topics we talk about. I've said it before in private, and I'll say it again in public. The show is what it is because of you guys on the panel and in the chat. And I love the fact that you guys want to come spend the time with me. Let's go ahead and go through the panel. Kingpin, do you have anything that you'd like to leave with?
Yeah. One, I'm not a hero. I'm not a coward either. But you're not just going to take anything from me. And that includes my rights. You know, you can write all the bills that you want to write, and I'm going to follow them just like the sheep that I am. But when you write the bill that crosses the line, I'm not going to comply. And you're going to have to come take it from me. And that's just all there is to it. You know, I'm not a coward. And I'm also not, you know, a rebel either. I'm not going to fight the system. But when the system goes too far, the system is going to have to come take it from me. Whatever that is, if it's my free speech, if it's my Second Amendment rights, if it's the tennis shoes I got on my feet, you know, and that's where we got to be. You know, follow the rules and regulations. When the rules and regulations become tyrannical, don't follow them. And make sure that you follow this rule. Like, share, and subscribe to Budget Guns and Gears Review, and don't forget to tune in for the right of the people.
Thank you very much. Squib, any parting shots you'd like to make, sir?
Yeah, I'm not a coward either, but I am a hero. So, of
course you are. You're a Marine.
Well, I'm blushing, man. Stop. No. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Travis P11 channel, Caliber Corner. Check it out. And next week, Tuesday night at 10 Eastern, 2A Tuesday, we're going to have the abortion chat. It's going to be good. And Monday night.
What time is that on 2A Tuesday?
10 p.m. Eastern. You know, they say Tuesday night's 9 o'clock Central, but who uses Central time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm off. I could actually listen to that one. I could actually watch that.
This is the one where Sandhill Shooter's no longer going to be my friend anymore, and the half of the people on gun channels that don't already hate me will. So tune in for that.
This is the show where I'm probably going to get a little fired up on.
Oh, good. And then Monday night, probably around 10 p.m. Eastern, Lock and Load. I believe our show topic is going to be toxic masculinity unless we change that between now and then. So everybody tune in. Oh, also don't forget Rick's Life as I See It, 3 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. And there's some other Saturday and Sunday shows on Unloaded Media. I can't remember when it is. The Closer, it's on way late, so I listen to it after the fact. So Midnight Range does a show Sundays, and I think Unloaded Media is on Saturday night, but I'm not positive. Sarge will not be doing his show on Saturday, as far as I know, because he is going out to SHOT Show. And everybody have a good weekend. Thanks for watching.
Too Hottie says, yeah, a bunch of dudes sitting around talking about abortion is awesome. Well, I see what you're driving at. I like to listen to and watch controversy. I'll sit back with popcorn and pay attention to that.
I think Hottie's making a joke because we did that at like 2 a.m. one morning. Was it last summer? I think it was. We stayed up and he was on and we were talking about abortion or something like that. Yeah, it was just late. We were all tired.
All right, Stealth Hunter, anything you'd like to say, sir?
Appreciate the invite. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Check out GunTube and Gun Channels. If you're not already subscribed. And if you want food, please contact Midnight Range TM. He makes waffles and all other types of good stuff.
Should be calling him SpongeBob TM because he's a frickin' fry cook. Anyhow, that being said, again, as always, I would like to thank the panel for coming in. Those of you in the chat who are still around here, you guys, if you're not already, need to go over to their channels and sub to them. They all have some good things to say. So, you know, give them some love.
Rich White said 8 p.m. on Saturday. Sorry, I just jumped over to the YouTube chat. I don't normally look at it. So, Unloaded Media, 8 p.m. Saturday.
There you go, 8 p.m. Saturday. Check it out.
I'm pretty sure it's Sunday. Yeah, it's definitely 8 p.m. on Sunday. I messed up and put 7 p.m. Sunday, but it's 8 p.m. Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday, what's the difference? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
they all end in the day.
Sunday, Squib Sunday.
Thanks for fixing that. Shit.
Well, there you go, 8 p.m. Sunday. Check it out. As always, thank you to everyone out there in the chat, both on YouTube's and gun channels. I am very gratified, humbled, and amazed that so many of you have stuck around to listen to me blather on and go on a rant like I did tonight. You know, it always humbles me that you guys care what I have to say. So thank you very much. And I love, that's one of the things I love about this medium and doing the live streams is the engagement I have with you guys where we can have the conversation and I can hear what you guys think too and play off of that. So that is just awesome. As always, I'd like to leave you with the encouragement to contact your elected representatives and Congress critters and let them know what you think. It is now more important than ever that we stay on them and hold their feet to the fire. You know, snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, semaphore, heliograph, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, do whatever you have to do to let them know what you think. And never, ever, ever give up the fight.
Oh, yeah, and one more thing. Check out Gary. Gizzy Gary coming up next.
Yep, go check out the Giz. Give him the bird.